Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk here in the southeast region of Scotland, which, of course, as everybody knows by now, is the centre of the entire universe and all other multiverses that there may be out there. And, you know, we dominate every possible dimension. I don't know how long I can keep that intro up for, but it's entertaining to poke fun at nationalism. But anyway, I hope everybody is alright and has had a great start to their week. Welcome. I have had a busy first half of my week, but hey, you know, we're at, I think they call it hump day, halfway through the week. I really can't call it hump day without a straight face, but there you go. That just shows my personal level of maturity. But here we are. Let's see who's here. Just Bob was first in the door. And he says, I'll be in and out tonight waiting on an update about my mother-in-law. Bob, we are standing with you as a community, and we are also waiting with you. So if you have an update that you want to share with us, if you feel you can, then please do, so that we can give you all the help and support that we can. Okay, so please do that if you would like to. If you don't want to, that's okay. We're okay with that too. But just know that we are all standing with you. I think it's important that we convey that, and I think I can speak on behalf of everybody here tonight. All right. Next is Christina over in Denmark, and she says hello, and she is going to bed. Totally understand that, because it's like 1 o'clock in the morning there over in Denmark. Here it is 5 past midnight. Boris Dancy says, currently writing an up-tempo Afrobeat groove in E minor, chords 1, 2, 5, and 5 minor 9. What could be a good B section or a good mode to craft a melody in? Good thing you should mention melody writing, because we're going to dig into that, or at least we're going to begin to dig into that. We're going to go over some basics to start with. For some of you, this is going to be information you already know, and for some of you, it's not. For some of you, this is going to be something that you heard for the very first time. For some of you, it's going to be a refresher. And for some of you, this is old news and you've been doing this for a while. So even if you have been doing this for a while, it's always good to take a wee step back and go back to bare bones basics and have a look at how we do things using the basic rudiments of music and music making. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start by looking at what makes a good melody work, and we're going to be starting with bare bones basics of melody writing. So we're going to look at what I call the arc of a melody. There is a posher word for it, but I think a more musicological word for it, but we'll call it arc, okay, because it's the shape of the melody, the rise and fall of a melody, and how you can maximize that natural rise and fall of a melody to make your melodies make sense, rather than just being wandering around, kind of, you know, either walking up and down a scale or just hitting random notes. Because when we are dealing with melody, we are dealing with communication. We are dealing with the language of music, by which we convey the story in our songs. All right, if you've got a story, or if you're describing something in music, and your lyrics are talking about a particular character, a particular scenario, or they're talking about a particular person or something else, whatever your song is describing, you need to be able to communicate that effectively. And great lyrics are a great place to start, and we will get into lyric writing later this year. But before you get to good lyrics, you need to get a good melody. A good melody is essential for a good song, because if you write a bad melody, a melody that makes no sense, a melody that doesn't grab the listener's ear and grab their attention and engage them emotionally in the song, it doesn't matter how great your lyrics are. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get any traction, and they'll just hit skip and move on to the next song. And, you know, your song may never get listened to by that person again. That is not what you want. Even if you're not selling your song to buy it, even if you're just putting it up on Spotify, or you're putting it up on SoundCloud or TuneCore or wherever you're putting it, you want people to listen to your song. You want people to engage with your song, because you have a message. You've got a story to tell, and you want that story to be heard, and you want that story to be understood. So a good melody is essential. So how do we avoid the aimless wandering? How do we make melody concise? How do we make it less kind of, because when you say melody, it's a broad concept. So how do we get from broad concept to something that is much easier to actually make work, with a little effort, but not too much effort? Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the broad concept of melody and we're going to break it down into some bite-sized pieces, because this is Songwriting Simplified, and that's what we do. We take big things and we make them smaller so that we can not only attain understanding of the much bigger thing by taking smaller bites at it, but also so that by understanding it bit by bit, and we see the building blocks that make this big concept, it makes it a lot easier to write music using this concept. And it means that when somebody says, write a melody, it is no longer a scary thing for you. You don't just sit there with a blank piece of paper going, I have no idea what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to note bash and hash something together. No. You break it up into phrases, and that's what we're going to look at tonight, okay? So, musical, melodic phrases. And I'm going to get on to Ron Figura's question as well. But let's keep going. So we got John Hawk here as well. And we got Billy Morgan. We got Don Oliver. We've got Elusive 1970. And we've got Sean Aaron, who's talking about guitar amps. And we've got Kyle Drajuziak. And we have got, let's see, Bobby Booth is here as well. And we got Brett Marla, and we got Kieran, and we got Stephen Wilson, and that's all I see right now. If I've missed your name, please do say hello in the chat. If the chat's locked for you, it's subscriber mode only, hit the subscribe button, join the party. You'll only have to wait 2 minutes after you've hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button, select all notifications as well, so you always know when this show's going to be, because you get a notification. And also, like I said, hang around here just for a couple of minutes. Then the chat will be open to you, and you can say hello and you can ask your questions, because that's what this show's about. We do a little bit of a demo, and you guys get to ask your questions. And you guys have already been asking questions, which we will cover tonight. All right, so melody. How do we make a melody? And how do we make it good? How do we make it make sense? And Ron Figura was talking about Notion. So Ron Figura's question ties in very nice and neatly to what I'm going to show you, because I am going to show you Notion Mobile. Now, you will immediately start thinking, oh, he's going to go into notation. I don't read music. I don't understand notation. This is going to go right over my head. I'm not going to understand a thing of what's going on here. Wrong. You're going to understand how this works, even if you don't read notation, okay? You are still going to understand how this works. So let's go over to Notion Mobile. Here we are. Notion Mobile. I don't often show Notion on any of my videos or any of my live streams. So this is kind of a new thing. Let's get the wee camera on. There we go. So we have a flute and acoustic guitar. I'm going to play this little melody through for you. And then we're going to take a look at what makes this melody work. And by the way, I wrote this melody. This is my melody. I wrote this in 30 seconds flat. before I hit record, before I hit start streaming, I should say, for this show. So, and you're going to say, oh, but you've been doing this for years, so of course you wrote this in 30 seconds. Well, there is that, but once you know how to do this, you know how to do it, and then it's just a case of keeping oiling the machine, keep exercising those melody writing muscles, and yes, it does become second nature, and yes, you can knock out a melody, a little 12-bar melody like this, very, very quickly. Alright, so let's play this. We got flute and acoustic guitar. The voicings will sound a wee bit weird on acoustic guitar because it's basically just chords. And I've just put rhythm slashes. So some of the voicings may, for you guitar players, may sound a wee bit weird. But it is what it is. Here we go. Let me turn it up a wee bit, actually. We can do that. Let's close the mixer. Let's go back. All right, go back to the top. Now, you don't have to be able to read the notation to know what is going on here. I have broken this down. I have written this melody deliberately so that it is easy to follow. It's a really, really simple melody. And we have 2 different phrases. In fact, this is comprised of 3 separate 4-bar sections. So what we have here is, you could call this section A, then you could call this section B, and then we have section A repeated. So it's an A-B-A form, right? And in musicology, we call that ternary form because it's got 3 parts. There's binary that's got 2 parts, A and B. Ternary is A, B, A. And then, of course, there's a variation on that, which is very popular in songwriting, where you repeat the A section to start with. So you have A, then B, and then A again, which is a 16-bar melody. And then you repeat the whole thing again, and that makes it a 32-bar melody. Or you would have longer A sections. You have like 8-bar A section, 4-bar B section, 8 bars again at the end, or some variation thereof. So yes, so if we repeated this at the start, if we repeated these four bars, we'd have 8 bars A, 4 bars B, and then 4 bars of A again. You'd only repeat it once, and that would be your song form. So what we got here, let's break each of these sections down. So section A here, we have a rising phrase to start with, and we're using the pentatonic scale in C major. So we got C, D, E, G, and A. So I've stated the pentatonic scale right there in those first 5 notes. And then we're going down to the 5 of the scale. So we go 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 5. Okay, in the C major scale. And then we go 6, 5, 3, 2, 1. So this is how melody writing works in its essence, regardless of the style of music, whether it's this simple or whether it's incredibly complex Frank Zappa style music. Okay, melody writing works this way most effectively when you do it like this. You have phrase 1, which is this phrase here. So you could say this is like a question because it goes up. It's like Australian question intonation, where they all talk like this in Australia. This is what they do. It doesn't matter if the sentence is a sentence, it still ends up being a question. That's what they do in Australia. So they constantly talk like this, going up, right? I know I have Australian family, so it's okay for me to talk like this about Australians. So we have rising melody to start with. You can do it the other way around if you want. It depends upon the mood of your music. You can go down if you would prefer. But contrast is key here. So we've got an ascending phrase here, and then we've got a descending answering phrase. So if you're going to do a descending phrase to start with, a question phrase, then you want to answer that with an ascending phrase, okay? Now, we start on the tonic, which is number 1. So chord 1, number 1 of the scale. And we finish the phrase resolving on the 1. This is a good arc of melody, okay? So we're going up, and then we're coming back down to home again. So we go up a little bit, and then we come back down to home. So that's the A section, or phrase A, or I'm going to call this section A and call it these phrase 1, phrase 2, or call, response, question, answer. So I've asked a question. I've asked what's for dinner tonight, and the answer is sausage supper. Great. Let's ask another question. How long is it going to take? So I'm using the same notes, but this time I'm starting on 2, and I'm going up to the octave. I'm going up to 1, the octave up. And then I'm coming back down to 6 here, which spells out the 5th and the 3rd of the F major chord. So I've started out by saying, what's for dinner? Sausage supper. How long's it going to be? 5 more minutes. Or let me take a look. This is probably more accurate. So it's question and an answer that's not resolved. And I'll explain that. Because we're on a G7. G7 is chord 5 in C major, and we've got the D here, which is the 2nd degree of the C major pentatonic scale, which is the 5th of the G7 chord. So this isn't resolved. So if I was to play the melody from the beginning and stop here, it would not be, you would end up with tension. It wouldn't resolve. Now, if I stop it right there, it's not resolved. It's just hanging there. It doesn't sound like we've arrived back home like we did in the first phrase, in the first line. Okay? So, we got definite question, definite answer, another definite question, inconclusive answer, because it's unresolved. And then we asked the same question, the first question again. Sorry, I forgot. What are we having for dinner again? I already told you. Sausage supper. And that's the definite answering phrase. Okay? So this is a good way to structure your melody to make it make sense. This is on a really small scale. So, question phrase, definite question phrase, definite answer phrase, which you resolve to the tonic. Definite question. And this time I'm going up a little bit higher than the first question, because maybe this is a little bit more insistent. Because maybe I'm hungry, right? And I want to find out how long it's going to take. And my wife, Kate, is cooking the dinner. And she goes, hang on, let me take a look. It's unresolved. I'm waiting for her to come back and tell me how long it's going to take. In the meantime, I say, yeah, sorry, I've had a long day. I'm tired. My memory's a wee bit frazzled. What do you say we're having for dinner? And then she's really maybe a little bit irritated with me, and she goes, I've already told you, sausage supper. Definitive answer, closed answer, the end of that subject. And so that's what we got here. So this is only like a few seconds long. And so in a much larger work, we could consider all of this section A. This is like a 12-bar A section. And then we can do a B section that contrasts with this if we were to continue this melody. How would we do that? We could go to the relative minor. So here we could end with this line here, but we could modify it so that instead of landing on the definite C here, although we could still land on the definite C, but this time we slightly adjust the chord changes so we can do a 2-5-1 in A minor, and this would be E7 with the sharp 5, okay? And then this next section here would start here, and we would start entering notation here, and we'd put in our chords in A minor here. And then we'd do the same kind of thing again. New questions, new answers. Maybe not necessarily related to the sausage supper, but maybe we've moved on from talking about food and now we're talking about drink. So maybe I'll say, great, what are we going to have to drink to go with the sausage supper? And my wife will say, there's beers in the fridge. Well, that accounts for the first line. But of course, we're in the minor key by this point. So minor is a little bit darker. So maybe I start by saying, what are we going to have to drink? There's nothing in the fridge. And she might say, what do you mean there's nothing in the fridge? So she's answered my question with another question. So I will say, I'm telling you, I'm looking, there's nothing in the fridge. And then she would say, no, you're not looking properly. Move those things off the top shelf and you'll see the beers. Definite answer to finish with. And that would be like a B section. And then we could go back to the A section and review it again. So we're definitely having sausage supper. Yes, we're definitely having sausage supper. And all of that. How long is it going to take? Hey, it's looking like it's nearly done. So it's kind of still an unresolved question. And then we repeat the whole thing finally to say, great, we are having sausage supper. Yes, we are having sausage supper. So do you see how we've gone and we've told a story with this lyrics, without any lyrics? I'm just suggesting a narrative here for this melody arc. And I don't know why I'm talking about sausage supper, because I did not have a sausage supper for my dinner. I had a pizza. So, but you could substitute whatever you want. Whatever your story is. It doesn't really matter what your story is. But so do you see how we've developed this? And I haven't even written this B section. I've just suggested what we might do with the story arc. And I haven't even got to entering notation. But it would not take me very long to do a contrasting section. It would only take me a matter of a few seconds to do that. So we got this A section. We do the B section that is a little bit contrasting. Maybe we introduce a problem into the story. Like, I can't find the beers. I want beer. I can't find the beers. And then we resolve that tension with my wife saying, you're blind. Move the stuff off the top shelf. There you'll see the beers. Great. And then we get back to the original subject, the sausage supper. How's that sausage supper looking? Is it ready yet? Yeah, it's looking pretty ready. And then maybe the contrasting question here, we're using the same melody, might be, shall I put the cutlery out? Maybe not quite yet. And then I might call my kids down and say, we're having sausage supper. Yes, it's on the table now, or something like that. And we've completed our story arc. We've gone from me talking to my wife about what we're having for dinner and her informing me what we're having for dinner and me then following that up with how long is it going to take? And she says, let me take a look. And then we go into introducing the problem of not able to find the beers. And then she resolves that tension by saying, actually, I know exactly where the beers are. You're just being a thick idiot. And that's not unsurprising in this household. Trust me. And so we end up repeating that first section of melody. Why do we do this? Why do we have all of this repetition? Because if you think about it, If we repeat this whole A section again after we've done this contrasting B section, this first phrase will have been heard once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. This is good, because what that does is repetition gets melodies into people's minds, and by the time you've not even finished the very first performance of your song, the listener already knows the melody and they are already singing along. That's where you want to get to. This is why melody should be strong. This is why melody should be, I'm not saying simplistic, but it should be memorable, and it should have this arc to it, where you've got a question and a question phrase, an answer phrase, another question, another answer. Let's go back to the first question. Let's modify the second answer so we can take it into another subject. Great. New question. New answer. Another question. Another answer. Bring that A section back and do the whole thing all over again. Because that is what connects a story together. That's what brings it to conclusion. And then, of course, you always end on the tonic. Unless you like leaving your listener with suspension and tension that just goes unresolved, in which case you can end it where I ended playing this line here. You can leave your listener right there if you really, really want to, but you will end up with this particular style of melody writing, this particular very simple song, leaving them hanging and dissatisfied. So I wouldn't advise it. All right, so there we have the bare bones basics of creating a melody using just 5 notes. 5 notes, nothing more. Just the 5 notes of the C major pentatonic scale. And developing a question phrase, an answer phrase, another question, another answer. Bringing back that first line again. So we have like A, B, A. To bring the whole thing to a sense of conclusion and resolution before you move on to the next thing, which will be your contrasting section. And then you wrap that up by bringing the whole A section back again. And maybe you just do, 1A, 1B, and you adjust this line here to resolve it back onto the C. Something like that, if you really want to do it that way. So you don't actually do all three lines of the A section. It's just a partial repeat. You can do it that way. So I hope that this is a helpful little starter for getting into melody writing. And yes, I've used notation, but that really shouldn't matter because you don't really need to read the notation to understand how this works. That we're going upwards here. You can follow the notes that are going up the stave, so they're going higher in pitch when that happens, and then they're coming back down. So you can see the arc of the melody, even if you're not sure what the pitches are or how long these notes last. All right. So I hope that helps, and we'll get into your questions now. And I'm going to go back. Boris's question about what would be a good B section or a good mode to craft a melody in. So Boris, I hope actually that this has helped you, because I know you're in E minor, so you've got a different kind of problem. Because this is in C major, so you could be using, the E minor pentatonic scale for your A section in E minor. Maybe you go to the relative major for your B section to contrast. You got darkness, let's contrast that with light. So maybe I just got another notification that we dropped. That we dropped OBS there for a second. That was weird. So yes, so if you're in the minor key, go to the major key for your contrast. So you've got darkness, light, bring it back to the darkness again. So what's the relative major of E minor? That would be G major. So if you're in E minor and you're, what did you say you're using? 1, 2, 5, and 5 minor 9. So and then chord 5. I think that's what you're talking about. So yes, so you could sneakily go up to G major. You know, you could do, and now you're in G major. So you could do a little 5-1 using that D over F sharp thing that we talked about last week. So you can kind of do that if you want to go to G major and then work your way back to E minor via B7 to give you that 5-1 back into E minor again. That might work for you. Ron's question: can you run through steps to create a lead sheet in Notion and what formats I can export or print to? Yes, I can do that. So let's go back over to our screen here. So this is not a lead sheet, but there is a lead sheet format, template, I should say. I'm doing this in Notion Mobile, but there is a similar thing in Notion 6. Notion Mobile is free. Notion 6 is not. But I can show you this in Notion Mobile, and it's pretty much exactly the same. So let's go and click on this here, and then we can click on our lead sheet template here, and we'll call this lead sheet test score. Helps if I could type. Test score. All right, now we hit OK. Now, with this, you'll notice that we get a more kind of handwritten kind of font. This is what they call jazz font. The reason why is because a lot of big band scores and big band arrangements were written using a calligraphy pen. I used to write with a calligraphy pen all the time, and it became traditional. And so you get this kind of thin, fat kind of font style. So that's essentially all you need to do. And then you can enter your notation just by selecting notes and then putting them in. And, you know, whatever it happens to be. And then if you want to put chords over the top of it, let's go C7, and we want C7 augmented for this chord here, and then this chord here we'll put as F major 7, but not the augmented, just regular. Double click there to get that in there, and then what's we got here, D, E, F sharp. So this could be like a D9 chord maybe. So we go D, 7, 9. We double click that in there. Oops, that one changed. That was not meant to change. So this should be F major 9. There we go. Now you will notice that these will not play back. If I play this, those chords won't play. All right, so how do we solve that little problem? Quite simple. We go to the score setup and we add in, let's say, an acoustic guitar. And we maybe modify this acoustic guitar so we don't have the tab, we just have the standard notation. So we've just got the two parts here. And then what we do is we range select those 3 bars, and then we go tools, fill with rhythm slashes. And now we've got nice rhythm slashes, right? And then what we do is we copy that chord and we paste it there. That didn't work. Nope, that's not where I wanted that. We paste that there. Then we do the same here. We go copy, oops, copy, put the cursor there, and we paste that there. And we do the same here. Copy that, cursor down there, and paste. And that, oh, I know what happened there. I know what happened there. Let's just delete that. That should be that one there. Copy that, paste that there. So now this is a lead sheet, so you don't want this acoustic guitar in there, but you want to hear the chords, right? And of course you can adjust the balance because that guitar is obscenely loud. Okay, so once we've done that, we can go to the score and we can hide our acoustic guitar part, and now it will play back. All right, so that gives you an idea of what you need to do. So if you want the chords to play, if playback bothers you, or if this is just something that you're just going to hand over to another musician, so it doesn't matter whether you hear those chords or not, then don't worry about having that acoustic guitar part. You can just not bother with doing that step, okay? And then when you want to print this out, let's just say we've completed this and we're happy with it. We can go to the three-dot menu at the top here. First thing I'm going to do is save it. And then next thing I'm going to do is export score. And I'm going to go to store file. But let's say we want to send this to somebody as a MIDI file. So we can store this as a MIDI file. Then we just hit export. And it'll go to the desktop, and then you can email that off to somebody. But let's say you actually want to send the actual Notion document. So let's say they already have Notion. You can send that as a Notion file, or you can send it as a PDF file. So you could store this as a PDF file on your desktop, and then you can email that to whomever you are going to have perform this lead sheet. Or if it's for one of your gigs, Ron, then this is great. You can print these out. Or you can send your musicians in your band MIDI file and PDF, so they can hear the track and they can follow the PDF score, and then they've got the PDF score which they can either put on a tablet or they can print out at home and bring to the gig. It's kind of up to you what you want to do at that point. But yes, so you could send a MIDI file, you could also send the PDF file, but you have to do, whichever you're going to do, you have to do this one at a time. So you could do the PDF file first and then come back and do the MIDI file again. You can't actually check multiple things, at least not yet. Maybe in the future you might be able to, I don't know, but which would be nice. But for right now, you have to do the export one at a time. So MIDI file first or PDF file first, doesn't really matter. You'd have to still do them one at a time. And then once that's done, especially if it's a PDF file, you can just email it to whomever on your distribution list. Let's say, you've got your whole band on a distribution list, then you're just sending the one document off to all of those people. So hopefully this helps you. Now, if you want to print, let's cancel this. If you want to print, then there is a print dialog that pops up. And you just select how many copies you want to make, and then you hit print. It's as simple as that. So if you were to do this in Notion, let's maybe have Notion open. Notion 6. And I'm going to maximize that. Then I'm going to minimize it. I know, weird. And then I'm going to go Now, this that I'm about to show you, you can only do if you have the feature bundle unlocked or if you are a member of Studio One Plus. I am going to transmit, and I'm going to transmit it to Notion on this computer. Format is going to be Score Exchange file, and then we're going to hit export. Then we go over to Notion, and there it is. Now, you'll see in Notion 6 that we have both parts, which is fine. But again, we can go up to the score setup here, and we can hide the acoustic guitar. Then we can exit the score setup, and now we just see that. Okay, and then again, you go to File. You can export the audio, you can export MIDI, you can export music XML, you can print to PDF, you can print parts to PDF in Notion 6. So if you want to send a PDF off to somebody, then you would do print to PDF. That creates the PDF file. Even if you're not going to print it, it's fine. It just creates the PDF version of the document, and then you can send that via email or Dropbox or whatever you want to use to whomever you need to send it to. But notice that when we sent that from Notion Mobile to Notion 6, we had the correct sounds. We had the piano and we had the acoustic guitar. So the whole thing got sent, including the sound, loading up the correct sounds from the two versions of the program. All right, so Ron, I hope that helps. That's a belter of a question. And it's about time we actually did a little bit of notioneering. Let's go and see what else do we have here. I'm going to try and find another question. Just Bob says, how does a song get written where the melody stays the same but builds every time it wraps around and doesn't seem repetitive? You can use something called rising sequence, or falling sequence. But if you want to create more tension, not have less, you may want to do a rising sequence. Let me show you an example of a rising sequence. So that would be part of your rising sequence. Now let's take that figure, whoops, and let's shift that up one note. And there we've got the resolution right there. So it's the same melody. So rising sequence is one way where you can keep the melody the same, but make it add tension. Or you can literally take the same notes of your melody and reharmonize it. Okay, so you could do, let's see if I can do this. You could do, so you could do something where you have the same melody, so that melody again. And then then a slight variation to accommodate the G7. Okay, and that's simple. I'm basically just going C, A minor, F, and G. But you can kind of vary that as well. You know, you could go. So the only slight accommodation there, or alteration to the melody, was to make it fit the A flat chord. Now that'd be very tense if I'd kept that E natural and the D natural there as well. You get those intervals. So I mean, you could get around that and change the chord to like an E7 over G sharp in the bass. Then you got the flat 9 there, which suggests going to A minor at that point. So you could, you know, and then you could do that. And then you're in A minor. So you can do this. There's a whole bunch of variations that you can try that can, you know, keep the same piece of melody interesting. Like I said, repetition is good. Repeating a pattern is good, because not only does it get that piece of melody into the listener's mind, but also if you're doing what I did just there, you can build tension, a lot of tension before you finally resolve it. And a lot of film composers use that idea a lot. I mean, listen to John Williams's brilliant music for the duel between Darth Maul and Qui-Gon, I think it is, in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And the music for that is called The Duel of the Fates. And so you have this ostinato that goes all the way through that. What's an ostinato? An ostinato is a posh Italian term for repeating figure. And you get that, it starts in the strings. And you find that phrase getting moved around depending upon where the melody is. So when the melody is in the choir, for example, you hear the low strings take that. And then you end up with the brass taking that melody, that little phrase at one point. And you also get you get xylophone and glockenspiel taking that little motif as well. Whilst the choir are singing the Sanskrit choral part, which is incredibly beautiful, but also loaded with tension. So the whole thing is loaded with tension. You've got a very tense discordant melody and harmonies in the choir, and then you've got the orchestra providing this kind of almost rock and roll like motif that is very driving, providing this forward motion. So that kind of little repeating motif serves to get that into the listener's mind and help build that tension for the viewer watching the scene and watching the action unfold. And that's juxtaposed with the long notes that you hear in the choir. And then you hear this da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, which keeps coming back every now and then. And you hear it in the brass, you hear it in the strings, you hear it in woodwinds. It gets tossed around the orchestra like they're tossing a beach ball around on the beach. You know, that's what it's like. I mean, this is compositional virtuosity. John Williams is playing with you. As this scene unfolds, he's playing with you. He's taking this little theme, da 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 da, which you've heard in the choir already, just with notes that are much longer. And turns out to be a bit of a kind of another kind of motif. So you have the long notes in the choir, and then you have dun 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 in the orchestra. Then you get the choir doing something else, and then that comes back again, but it's a different part of the orchestra playing it. And all the time you've got that dun 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 going on all the same time. So repetition is good because you can use it as a rhythmic vehicle. And then because you've got lots of short notes, which is providing forward motion, driving the tempo, you can have a long whole note, half note, legato melody to juxtapose that. So the melody itself moves slowly, almost kind of mysteriously, whilst you've got this pulsating thing going on. It's almost like what John Williams has done there is he's got the agitated Darth Maul, the dark side of the Force, and then you've got the chilled out kind of Jedi Master who's kind of, the Jedi, they're just so calm and serene, and they take everything in their stride. They never let emotion get on top of them, whereas Darth Maul is agitated and aggressive. And that's the duel of the fates right there. You've got calm sereneness of the choir. You've got the tension of this constant driving, agitated rhythm. And so it's things like using these contrasts that keep the listener engaged, even if the melody that you're using is the same, being repeated. Now, if you repeat something too much, it gets annoying and it gets irritating, which is why you have to change it up, which is why John Williams doesn't keep that dun 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 going all the way through. It's at certain sections, and there are points where that drops out completely, and suddenly you're left with no pulse at all, and the music just kind of sits for a minute and breathes a wee bit, and then it comes back again. So there's another contrast between forward motion, propulsion, with a strong rhythm to no rhythm hardly at all, and just letting the music sit and breathe for a moment. And so that's how you can keep the listener engaged, is by providing little bits of contrast here and there, and then joining all of those things together. Now, John Williams is obviously the master of melody. I mean, he's written so many iconic melodies that everybody knows, everybody remembers. Everybody knows the theme to E.T. Everybody knows Luke's theme from Star Wars. Everybody knows the Imperial March from Star Wars. Everybody knows the Indiana Jones theme tune, for goodness sake, because they're great examples of brilliant melody writing, because they are simple, straightforward, powerful, effective, and underpinned by great, kind of contrasts. So I hope that helps answer that question. Let's go see what else we have. Brett says, is there a ratio of chord tones versus non-chord tones that you typically use? Not really. The thing that I like to do is I like to contrast tension and, lots of dissonance with consonance. So I might use quite kind of almost plain songish chord changes, and then write something that's quite tense over the top of it. So I might use something that's, and then I might contrast that with something that's a little bit more tense. So there was a mixture there of diatonic and non-diatonic chords there. For example, I was in C, and then I did this little B flat over D to lead me temporarily to the key of E flat, and then C over E to get me to F major, D over F sharp to get me to G minor, E over G sharp to get me to A minor, and then I did 4, 5, 1. So the E flat was completely non-diatonic at all. But it was a little stepping stone. Like that. So it's a little stepping stone, and it introduced a little bit of color and a little bit of tension. Wasn't quite as dissonant as what I did earlier, but so that's what I tend to do, is I tend to mix kind of very diatonic like that, you know. And I've ended up with resolving it with something very diatonic at the end, a little, you know, a little 2-5-1. But we, you know, chord-wise, we went all over the place. We went, you know, C, D over C, C over B flat, C over A flat, which is all a little bit weird, and then G minor to G flat 7, sharp 9, sharp 5 to this weird sounding chord, which is like a B13 sharp 11 to E major, then E flat minor, A flat 7, flat 9, which kind of doesn't really go anywhere. We interrupt it to D minor, G7 to C major. So it's that for me personally, it's a combination of you start with something consonant and then you move it away and then you bring it back. So when I'm improvising, I like to do that with my right hand. So I'll start with notes that fit all the chords, and then I will gradually just move away from the chord changes altogether and then bring it back, because I like to load up with as much tension as I can possibly get. And it sounds like I'm playing in a different key, and guess what? My right hand may well be playing in a different key to my left hand. Or my piano with both hands, if I'm playing with a band, may well be in a completely different key to the rest of the band. But then I bring it back. I bring it back using, you know, clearly defined things like 2-5-1s. And those work great, especially over things like a pedal point. I think we've talked about pedal points before, where you've got like a single bass note. You know, let's just take the C for a minute, and we've got changing chords over the top. So that's kind of a pedal point. The chords change over the top of a static bass note. So if I'm playing with a band and we're vamping and the bass player is just playing on one note, then that's an opportunity for me to go, to hell with the chord changes. I will take it off into a completely different key, but I'll always make sure that I bring it back. Why? Because if you take it off into outer space, you can lose your listener in outer space, and I don't want to do that. I want to be like a rubber band, stretch it for as long as I possibly can, build up that tension as much as I can before I snap it back and we come back home. So for me, that's kind of what I do. So there isn't really a ratio for me. It's kind of like just trying to find that perfect balance that sounds good. You know, it's not about whether it's musicologically good. It's about whether it sounds good. If it sounds good, it is good. That's what Duke Ellington said. So, doesn't matter whether it fits, music theory conventions or not. The key thing here is, and that's what this show is all about. It's about making sure that you folks kind of know the rules, so that once you're familiar with the rules, you can break them. You can throw the rules out the window. But learn them first. Learn to work within them first, so that you know how they work. And then you can break them knowledgeably, rather than just going, I don't care about rules. I'm just going to go with whatever. Because that's how you can move away from solid communication to no communication at all. And that's what I'm hoping to avoid with this little series of shows on melody writing. We are actually over time, but Brett is correct. If you're a member of Studio One Plus, then Notion 6 is free. Yes, it is included in your membership, but otherwise it is not free. Brett says, I guess I was looking at this ratio to constructing the melody against its harmony, not so much as where the progression goes. Okay, yes, we can certainly look at that next time, for sure. How are you coming up with what chord to put behind the melody? To be honest, I'm using notes that are in these particular examples, because I'm trying to keep it fairly straightforward and simple. To start with, I'm keeping things diatonic. So I'm keeping things within the scale. So everything belongs, in this case, everything belonged to C major, apart from those latter examples where I was just going off and into tension land and bringing it back. It's in these examples, it's about keeping it diatonic. Everything belongs to the scale, so that's where it lives. It's not about ratios. It's about you keep the chords belonging to the scale, and you keep the melody notes belonging to the scale and the key, obviously, and they will work. If you're using notes from the C major pentatonic scale, or notes from the C major scale itself, and chords derived from, chords 1, chords 2, chord 3, chord 4, chord 5, chord 6, then all of those are going to work. All of those are going to fit in a C major context. And you can transpose that to any other key. If it's a major key, then yes, those chords will all fit. So that's kind of where that is. So I hope that helps. So we are out of time. And we will pick this up, this kind of melody writing thing, we'll pick this up next time, and we will continue developing this idea of question answer, phrasing, and the overall structure. So the idea, certainly for me, you start with the overall structure and you break it down to 2-bar phrases, 2-bar phrases, 2-bar phrases, 2-bar phrases. And you can end up with a whole, 10-minute work if you really want to. All right, so next Wednesday we'll be continuing melody. This week on Sunday we will have Sunday Night Live, your Studio One questions and stuff like that. But on Friday it is the UK Studio One meetup. If you're a Studio One user or you're a member of Studio One Plus and you want to hang out with a bunch of folks and you want to talk about Studio One, you maybe want to talk about how you're using Studio One, or you want to talk about an issue that you're having using Studio One, or you want to talk about things you would like to see in future versions of Studio One, then the Studio One meetup is for you. So we start at 8 p.m. UK time. So work that out for wherever you are in the world. There's timeanddate.com where you can check out what time that is for you. For example, that's going to be like 2 o'clock in the afternoon in some parts of the United States, and down in Australia it's going to be like breakfast time tomorrow. It's going to be, it's going to be breakfast time the next day. So that's Friday, so I would love to see a big turnout for that. So tell your friends, invite your friends. You'll find, if you're a member of Studio One Plus, that you've got access to the events page there. Grab the link, share it around, make sure people that you think it's going to benefit the most get to find out about it, and hopefully we'll get a nice big turnout. But until then, we have an after show booked up there in the chat with Billy Morgan. if you want to carry on talking melody and melody writing and all of that good fun stuff and just hang out and have a good laugh, then Billy's Zoom is just for that. So until next time, folks, thanks a lot for tuning in, and I will see you on Friday for hopefully oh, my analytics are completely blank. That's not good. I have no idea how many people came to this. Oh well. I'll see you all on Friday for Studio One meetup, and otherwise we'll be back here for Sunday Night Live. Until then, have a great evening. Good night, everybody.